So welcome back, everybody. We continue in chapter 42, Membez, in the original text, page Nun Test. We're holding towards the very end of the page, second last to last line of this page, Ach Iker, and you can see it as well in the corresponding English text. So, to see the message of this very chapter, this is the fourth class of the chapter. You can see this and all the other classes of the previous chapters as well, but this Membez has a very unique message, which is fundamental. As we mentioned, every Perek has its fundamental message, but Perek Membez is unique because it sets a whole different tone on what the point of learning Chassidus, learning of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, knowing HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the pasuk Das Elokei Avicha, the virtue of the faculty of Das, and which really establishes the Validei Balev of Shalim, serving Hashem with a true and complete heart. Which is, again, this is the point of the ultimate point, the Avdeu Balev of Shalim. And how does that come about? It's not just someone knows or gains a lot of information about a lakus of God, godliness. It's about the faculty of das, which makes that transformation that a yid is able to truly serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with a complete heart, not only doing what Hashem wants, obeying Hashem, overall fulfilling the mitzvahs the way it's prescribed to us in Shulchan Aruch, but the Lev Shalim, a complete heart, which means emoting with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which that is transformative, that a yid, a human being, could connect with HaKadosh Baruch Hu emotionally. That is something extremely, it's something extraordinary that comes to the faculty of Das, and Alter Rebbe explains that this is namely the mandate of Moshe Rabbeinu in his generation, and the Moshe Rabbeinu, every generation has the Moshe Rabbeinu of that generation, as the Alter Rebbe quotes, or the Alter Rebbe brings over here, every generation there's the sparks of Moshe Rabbeinu which enters into the leaders of those generations, and they represent Moshe Rabbeinu, again representing the main mandate of Moshe Rabbeinu is imparting the Das and the Lakus. Moshe Rabbeinu representing the Das, the supreme Das of Atzilus. So everybody ultimately has, every Yid has the part of Moshe Rabbeinu within him. Again, with that he reconciles the Gemara, Moshe Rabbeinu kind of making Yiras Hashem, reverence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, something simple. The Gemara says yes in the face of Moshe Rabbeinu, in the Gabei. In others, for Moshe Rabbeinu it's simple. And Alter Rebbe asks that apparently he's asking from Am Yisrael, again, just very, very, extremely brief. And the Alter Rebbe basically, the Alter Rebbe's message is that this is the Moshe Rabbeinu which exists within every single Yid. And the Gabei, in the face of that Moshe Rabbeinu, Yid is Milsa Zutra Sihi, that even fear of Hashem, real reverence, we're talking about reverence, true reverence of Hashem, is also could be classified as zutris, is small, simple, and so on. And again, I'm saying this extremely brief. You can see the previous classes, so we can move on. And with today's class, you can see the previous classes on the website, on the tanyaonline.com website. For the newcomers, we do mention it every week. It's also this point that it's easy to follow the classes, a separate scroll bar with the text, and also the easy access to all the previous classes accordingly. So we did add one more point last week. It's always worthwhile to mention. Mashiach is not only additional Moshe Rabbeinu, which he is Hugel Rishon, Hugel Achrin, as the Gemara says, that he is the first Redeemer, he is the final Redeemer. Even though obviously there's something with Mashiach different than Moshe Rabbeinu. First of all, on the surface, Moshe Rabbeinu comes from Shevet Levi, the tribe of Levi, while Mashiach comes from the Davidic dynasty, which is descendants of Yehuda. But that idea, the similarity is because Moshe Rabbeinu namely imparted his das, the recognition, making Elokus, godliness real. Again, as explained in the previous classes in this chapter. Mashiach does that even because he represents the culmination of all the Moshe Rabbeinos, and he represents the culmination of the whole objective and goal of B'riyas Ha'olam, the creation of the world, the giving of the Torah. In other words, the culmination of the entire plan. And he imparts not only with das, in other words, imparts with his das to the people, but yet that image of master and pupil, but more so, he he imparts with the entire, he embeds the entire program, as we explained last week, used this terminology, with the people, and that's why the pasuk says Mashiach will come. Man will not need to teach his fellow friend to say, "Do as Hashem, know Hashem." Ki kulam yedu. Everybody's going to know Hakadosh Baruch Hu miktanim. The end of the pasuk, the V'gaymer that Alter Rebbe brings the V'gaymer. In other words, he alludes to the end of the pasuk. L'miktanim ad gedolim, young and old, again, not only in age but even in stage as well. Everybody's going to know Hakadosh Baruch Hu. So what does that have to do with Mashiach? If everybody's going to know, what does it mean? There's no teacher anymore. He says, no, this is, in the end of the day, rather, this is the accomplishment, the extraordinary accomplishment of Mashiach, is that he imparts with the entire program of Dasas Hashem, not in the image of him being Moshe, and there's the student, the pupil, the recipient, as just getting part of that Moshe Rabbeinu, with the way it was from Moshe Rabbeinu till Yemei Mashiach. Mashiach's extraordinary accomplishment, and that he is going to kind of incorporate the program, so to say, of Das Hashem with every single Yid. Hence, Kulam Yedu Eisi, even without the image of teacher, giver, the one who relates the information, and the recipient of the information. But this in itself, again, we emphasize this in itself is Mashiach's accomplishment. Like every part of the Yehudim, all the promises of L'aseh Lovim, Mashiach will come, ought to go through Mashiach. Just like by Moshe Rabbeinu, redemption came through Moshe Rabbeinu, giving the Torah came through Moshe Rabbeinu. B'choy aminu la'olam, the Torah says, in the middle of the modus operandi of Matan Torah, Hashem makes sure that you didn't understand that there's no Torah without Moshe Rabbeinu. Hashem could have redeemed Am Yisrael in many, many different ways. It didn't need to have a Moshe Rabbeinu. Hashem is a Kol Yachol. Hashem could give the Torah also without a Moshe, but a Moshe Rabbeinu is part of the experience of the Matan Torah, or generally Moshe Rabbeinu stands Moshe Rabbeinu is an integral part of the relationship of Hashem and Am Yisrael, and therefore everything comes from Moshe Rabbeinu. Even this das, again, the ability to appreciate the Lukus in a real manner, the das also comes from Moshe Rabbeinu. So similarly, every one of the promises of Yemei Mashiach come from Mashiach, Melech HaMashiach. We explained this last week as well, and when we try to make a mistake that we could have some redemption without Mashiach, it's bound to fail, and it's evident. We pointed out a little last week, but namely, to keep it right, keep it in the context here, and to be able to immediately go further, this extraordinary accomplishment of Kulam Yedu Eisi, that everyone is going to have that Yedin Elokus, young and old, in every age and every stage. That is also, in other words, we won't need, like in all the previous generation, the giver, the receiver, the teacher, the recipient, is also and solely because of Melech HaMashiach. I mean, in other words, Melech HaMashiach accomplishes this extraordinary accomplishment that he embeds with the entire program, if you will, of Dasas Hashem, that everybody's able to know HaKadosh Baruch Hu on their own, because they have the entire program, which this is again the extraordinary promise and the extraordinary accomplishment of Melech HaMashiach. Like all the other special Yehudim promises associated with Mashiach's coming, comes directly from Melech HaMashiach. Again, like all the other promises, because Mashiach is the one who brings about all the implementation of all the promises, all the nevuahs, the prophecies and promises of this unique time which Yidden have waited for 3,300 years, come through Melech HaMashiach. And Melech HaMashiach is not only an integral part in its implementation, it is similar to Moshe Kibbel Torah Misinai. The Torah doesn't come down to Am Yisrael without Moshe Rabbeinu. Again, we spoke about this last week, this detail as well, but we immediately go on. And the following words, for that matter, is not something totally new, because we did mention it as we tried to explain what Das is, but here the Alter Rebbe makes it very clear and is very explicit of what is Das, what's the faculty of Das. That in the end of the day, it's not about gaining a lot of information, it's about focusing on it and making it real. And again, we use the term becoming intimate with a concept. That's the way it becomes real to you. As we quoted, Alter Rebbe quotes that Adam Yodes Chava, when Torah wants to say that Adam related intimately with Chava, Torah used the word he knew. He always knew Chava, that there's knowing and knowing. And the same thing when you say Das Elokei Avicha is intimately connecting with the information, then it becomes real, and as such, one connects with it in a way that it immediately causes that important transformation that he, as a human being, is able to emote, able to connect with HaKadosh Baruch Hu with true leiv of shalim, with true complete heart, meaning to say his heart is involved in his service to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And not only just dragging along, but the leiv of shalim becomes, it transforms the whole Aveda. The whole Aveda comes in connection to or follows the passion that it has in Avodas Hashem. Obviously, it's a different type of following Shulchan Aruch, but that comes precisely the faculty of Das. So here the Alter Rebbe continues again. Ach Iker, the end of the second to the last line of page on test, and again you could see it on the English correspondent English text. Ach Iker, which is still towards the beginning of the chapter. Ach Iker eina yedil levado sheyedu dol Hashem mipi sefer mipi svarim. It's not only the gathering of information, which we know the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu from great seifrim. Seifrim literally means scribes, but meaning those who ascribed the information of Elokus and godliness and Gedulas Hashem on many, many hundreds, probably thousands of svarim over the years, and in over the span of all generations. The Moshe Rabbeinu is the Nigla the Torah, Nista the Torah, the Nista the Torah, the esoteric part of Torah, namely focuses and deals with and elaborates on the godless of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then again, in every generation, in the Zayir from the times of Rishim Bar Yochai, in every generation, there was the many suffering scribes, again, if you will, those who related Torah, related information about godless Hashem. And then came the Hasidic leaders, which emphasized, or starting even before that, the Arizal and his disciples, the other Mekubalim, the Hasidic masters, Baal Shem Tov, his students, and again, in a very different and uniquely different manner, the leaders of Hasidus Chabad, their presentations, their hundreds of Svarim, and the Alter Rebbe himself, additional to the Nigla Torah, which the Alter Rebbe was an unprecedented goyim, not only of his generation, but of all generations. As is known, those who tap in a little bit to the knowledge or the works of the Alter Rebbe, known then in his generation, they said the Gdelim of Slutsk, which was a Lithuanian community, praised the Alter Rebbe in extremely unique type of praises. Again, besides his piety, his tzidkus, is a great godly tzaddik, a great godly individual, but namely his limud Torah, his knowledge of limud Torah. Used to call him, I think it was in Vitebsk, if I'm not mistaken, again, not from the Hasidic establishment, which was again not really established where the Alter Rebbe, in the initial years of the Alter Rebbe, he was the first Chabad Rebbe, but they said in the Alter Rebbe, in his young age, Rav Tano Pali, which is again a unique term on Rav, despite he was an Ameira, the beginning of the generations of the Ameiraim, which by definition cannot argue in the Tanaim. They said even Rav, at certain times when he did argue over the Tanaim, they said, yeah, Rav has that exclusive term, or that exclusivity of Tanu Palik, that he could be classified as a Tani, he could argue on the Tanaim. And that term was given to Alter Rebbe in a very young age. So the Alter Rebbe's knowledge in Torah, we don't have to speak about it. And look at the Shulchan Aruch of the Alter Rebbe. Generally, we know the writing Bechlal Shulchan Aruch is not. So we have very few who wrote Shulchan Aruch over the entire history. Very few. Count them almost pretty much on your fingers, because the Shulchan Aruch is not a sefer, which is a commentary on a particular Gemara, on a particular subject of Torah, and not even of all of Torah, or Shilas, or for example, nor Shilas Atshuvas, even many discussing different areas of Torah. Shulchan Aruch is like a wise individual has said the Shulchan Aruch is, every time the one who writes a Shulchan Aruch puts his quill to the paper, to the parchment, he has to think through the entire Torah, because that halacha has to fit with the entire Torah, and if it doesn't, it can't be halacha. Now, the Rebbe wrote a Shulchan Aruch. It's a different type of presentation. It's a different type of knowledge in Torah. It's a different world. And Alter Rebbe wrote a Shulchan Aruch, there are very few in history which wrote a Shulchan Aruch. But in the Chassidus, in the esoteric part of Torah, the Alter Rebbe himself, besides the Tanya, the magnum opus, that you could definitely say is the Tanya, and look at the Torah and Torah, the Alter Rebbe wrote over 55 Sfarim in Chassidus. 55 Sfarim, complete Sfarim in Chassidus. A lot of information. So the Rabbeim in general, in the Chassidus Chabad, was definitely something which was unique and extremely different. For the reasons, obviously, as we come closer to Yemais Mashiach, and Yemais Mashiach is about Das as Hashem, so they took definitely a quantum leap step in their, naturally mandated from above to come into the few hundred years prior to Mashiach's coming, to present this new idea which would give that true clarity and elokus to any Yid. It's definitely something to celebrate on a constant basis. This which was revealed to us through the Sfarim of Chassidus Chabad is just not only extraordinary, but something which is, unprecedented, literally unprecedented. But I will add that this is a lot of information. Again, information with Alter Rebbe said, be Seferim, be Sfarim, teachers, Sfarim, many books, which the Alter Rebbe is going to say that's still not Das es Hashem. But I want to add, what we emphasized last week, that it wasn't only the Hasidic masters, it was the Lithuanian masters, and for some reason it's not presented the way they themselves wanted their followers to invest in Pnimius HaTorah, in the way they wanted their followers to focus on Torah, as Torah being a complete Torah, not only Nigla the Torah, but also the esoteric part of Torah we mentioned last week, starting from the Vilna Gaon himself. And again, we see throughout, since then, and lately it's even coming out more, his Pirushim, his commentaries on Pnimius HaTorah. And his famous letter telling people their obligation to acquaint themselves and to learn on a constant basis Pnimius HaTorah. He says if we don't do that, it's missing, it's a blemish in the person's connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he writes there that it's mamish b'tzura mavhila, and it's such a stark fashion of he writes it's ma'akav the goyel. It prevents redemption and the Redeemer to come when we don't invest in our learning Pnimius HaTorah. So again, it was demanded, any kosher Yid understood, you have to have the Das Elokei Avicha in order to have the Avdei B'Lev Shalim. And Das Elokei Avicha is about Das and Elokus. For again, we mentioned last week, obviously every part of Torah a person learns, he connects to himself with Anechi Hashem Elokech, but the Eibush himself says, I want you to connect to me on multiple ways. Al shloisha dvarim ha'olam ha'imenu la Torah v'al aved of Gimlas Chasadim. What's wrong with only Torah? Wake up in the morning, learn Mecheshem Mishpan, a few hours Gemara, and then go on. But the Hashem wants that. He says that I want you to relate to me in different ways. Torah is about connecting to Anechi Hashem Elokecha. Avodah has a different idea. Avodah is emoting with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And to emote with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you can't prepare yourself just through learning Gemara, for example. Yeah, you could wake up 4 o'clock, 4 to 6, learn Gemara, but from 6 to 7, you have to learn about Elokus because you're relating. You have to have a Das, Elokei Avicha, because you're entering into Avdeyu B'Lev Shalom, Aveda Shebelev. It's a heart expression, it's passion, it's excitement. That comes, like anything else, you prepare yourself for this, what you're doing, with that type and style of preparation. So it has to be about knowledge of Elokus, and that's why it's demanded by every true leader. Again, in the Lithuanian leaders, equally perhaps, because they understood to be a kosher Yid, you have to invest in a healthy davening, and you have to exercise a healthy, true, genuine tefillah, genuine, successful prayer. And successful prayer means to say, to truly develop a passion to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Avos Hashem is not a badge. Yiras Hashem is not a badge. Avos Hashem is loving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Like the famous quote of the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva, Perik Yud, where he speaks about this. He says, Avo. He writes, Ke'avas Isa Isha as an example. He gives there, again, this is in black and white of the Rambam, Hilchos Tshuva, I believe, Perik Yud. It's love, it's a sensation, so you have to prepare yourself to that sensation. And so the Eibishter demands Aveda Shebelev, within the heart, with the heart, to emote with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You have to prepare yourself with that in order to have a successful davening, and that is about Das Hashem Elokei Avicha. which is the predication of this demand of the Vilna Gaon that people should learn Pnimius HaTorah. Because you will not have a successful davening if you won't prepare yourself. Obviously, there's the idea of Musar, Shiflus HaAdam, which is an emphasis in Musar, which is also a preparation to davening, thinking about our nothingness in the face of the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it's primarily Das Elokei Avicha, V'yodaita hayom asher b'yisrael levavecha, the knowledge of Hashem Elikim, and establish that sensation in the heart of it. So, back to what we were saying over here, so this is so understandably, they all shared information. It's important to gain information, but what is a Das faculty? It's not only gaining information. I want to have a very successful davening today, so I'm not only going to learn to listen to a class of 45 minutes, I'm going to listen to a class of an hour and 15 minutes. All about Gedulas Hashem. An hour and a half today, because I want to have a successful davening. Not necessarily. Or probably not, because you're appreciating a concept in Yedias Hashem, even though you have a thorough appreciation of it, a thorough understanding of it, but still it remains in the world of Chochmah and Bina. Again, we explained there, namely the third chapter, the difference of Chochmah and Bina, or a number of other places. Bina is definitely expansion, it's clarity in a concept, but every concept remains conceptual. And here you're talking about Avdeyu B'Lev of Shalim, to be that transformative, meaning to say to transform the heart, my heart, that I should be able to emote with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's not enough. Through the Chachma Bina, an appreciation of a matter. At that point, you have to introduce the Da Es Elokei Avicha, and that's why, for that matter, in the very pasuk, whenever Torah speaks about the transformation of heart, Torah doesn't say Tachkim or Tavin. Torah says, use the Lashon Yediyah. Das Elokei Avicha v'yodaita hayom. Even, when we speak about the parshas of the week, recently we had about Yaakov Avinu. Ochein, he says, Manera makom hazeh, v'nechi yodaiti. He used Lashon Yodaiti. In other words, Hashem is here. Well, Yaakov Avinu, at that age, doesn't know. He says, now I realize that Hashem is right here. Every Yaakov was brought up about with the message of Hashem Echad. Avraham Avinu, Zaynikal, and Yitzchak, and he was Yaakov Avinu, B'chir Sheba'avis, from day one. So what do you mean, Layadaiti? Because what happened then is, and again, every child, Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere, but there's appreciating our Lakus on the Chochmah Bina level, and again, Bina is about understanding the concept with much clarity. In other words, appreciating it to its detail. Bina is about expansiveness. Bina is about elaboration on any concept. But nonetheless, and again, everybody knows HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you ask everybody who's the Baruch Hashem and Hashem, but it's still short of that Yediyah, Das, utilization of the Das faculty, which Alter Rebbe is going to, again, we mentioned it in the previous classes, but Alter Rebbe is going to explain what is the Das idea. The Das idea is taking that information, and we use the term becoming intimate with the information based on this term of Ha'adam Yoda es Chava. When Torah again wants to relate of Adam relating with Chava intimately, it's the idea of connecting in a very different level. That's the Das faculty, and that's not about gaining information. That's about pausing on this information which you already thoroughly appreciate and understand, but focusing on it as something real. Aha, it's real. This is what it really is. And then, even we mentioned last week as well, the idea that the good Yid, after learning about Gedulas Hashem, if it was for an hour or for two, or some Yidden used to invest many hours in learning Pnimius HaTorah because they wanted to relate to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to have a true successful davening. As a table cannot stand with only 2 feet, it needs a third foot, and if Hashem demands it, we have to do it perfectly. It's like I'm going to open a Gemara and I'm going to just go through it without understanding what the Gemara says. I'm going to skip a few Rashis or not make sense necessarily make sense of the Rashi. The Taisvus, I'm just going to make up some. Someone's going to say, well, it's blemished. It's a blemished learning. So a kosher Yid goes to learning. He said, what does the Eibishter want? He wants me to understand every word ought to shine. If it's a Rashi, it has to have klept yeder word. It's not, I can't go through a Rashi if I don't see the message with maximum clarity. Thus, his gelernt. And the same thing with the Taisvis, has to understand the kasha, the answer, and so on. And so the other Rishonim, Achreinim, and so on. That's the way Hashem wants me to learn Torah, and if I'm a kosher Yid, that's the way I'm going to do so. And this, so similarly with davening, if Hashem demands that I should daven, and He wants one of the pillars, and again, of Ha'olam Eimed, in other words, in our relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, one of the ways Hashem wants us to emote with Him, to have a successful davening, so I'm going to make sure that my davening is not a blemished davening. It's not going to be just lip service, and it's not going to be over screaming. Sometimes people feel that they just scream very loud. They're going to like override all their themselves and another whatever. That's not emes. Davening is really becoming emotional with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, emoting with Hashem. And as a Mama Kosherid, I'm going to do everything. If Hashem wants me to daven, then my davening is going to be a davening is going to be a proper davening. That I'd be able to ignite my heart towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And for that it takes preparation. And that's why Yidden used to learn for many hours Pnimis HaTorah, because they wanted that their davening should be a successful davening. To truly be able to have a true Ava to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Yira of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But one of the things they did was that after learning these few hours of Pnimis HaTorah, they closed the Sefer. And this was the idea of, in Yiddish would be called Tracht Avot Chassidus. That they used to do for a few moments, literally, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, some of them 60 seconds, before they went into davening. They took the concept or the message of what they've learned, and they focused on it as something real. And when you focus on something that is like, oh, then that immediately, when you realize there's a realness of it, if you will, that immediately establishes that transformation, or at least the entry into that transformation. And then you take a siddur and you start davening. It's a different davening. I gave the example, which is worth repeat last week. Again, I spoke about this with Alter Rebbe in the third chapter. He speaks about the experience of the neshama. He shoots 3 important concepts, which is so many pages, hundreds of pages are written on each one of them. But again, we mentioned this last week, but let's take one concept. I believe we also mentioned last week, but just to understand what Alter Rebbe is saying over here, this what we say every day in davening. What is it we say? We say every nusach, every version of prayer has this. What do we say? That you're the same one before you created the world, you're the same one after you created the world. Why would I think Hashem changed? Before he created the world, he was wearing a black hat. Now he's still wearing a black hat. No, it's not what it means. Or before he was smiling. Now what's the message? And Ata, who you are before you created the world, and now you're the same one after you created. Why would you think Hashem changed? And the answer to this is because we would perhaps, and on the surface, maybe it makes even sense. Before Hashem created the world, what was there in the entire reality? Hashem. The infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu was present in every Hayahu Shmei Levad. Now Hashem decided so many thousands of years ago to create a world. So what is there? Now we have 2 entities. We have Hashem and His world. He created the world. Yeah, because He created the world, He's fully in charge and fully aware. There's no detail which could slip through Hashem because He is the creator of every detail within creation, and therefore, as such, there's nothing which, again, by definition, cannot slip through HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He knows it all, and He's aware, and He's totally in control, and so on. But there's still another reality, another entity which came into place after Hashem created the world. Before that, He was there Himself, and now there's another entity. Now, when you say there's another entity, somewhat, you can't have that same experience. In other words, the experience has changed. That there was only Achdus Hashem, the oneness of Hashem was manifest, and now Hashem's control is there. But there's a world. It's not Achdus Hashem. And this is what we proclaim every single day. That not to think for one moment that there's 2 entities before Hashem created the world, there wasn't anything. And not only there wasn't anything, there couldn't have been anything. Because when you have the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu present and manifest, nothing finite, which Olam we don't have to explain why Olam is by definition finite. The maximum expression of finitude is in Olam. Olam Lashon Hela v'Hester conceals over the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, especially Olam Hazeh. Everything is finite, and human beings and everything about Olam Hazeh is finite. With a certain measurement, even the big stuff in this world, it's all, there's a beginning, as an end, and so on. So the finite can never stand in the place of the infinite. So what was there? Only the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How when Hashem created the world, this is what we proclaim and protest. There's no two realities, Hashem and a world. There's the same infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu right here in the place where Olam is. Now, how did that happen? Well, yes, we learn about it, the whole idea of tzimtzum. In other words, if in the face of the infinite, the finite cannot exist, by definition, so how does the finite come into existence? And how did Hashem create a world in the presence of infinity? And there's no real question. Again, this question is asked, but again, there's so much spoken about, very much elaborated by the Arizal, in the one of the famous work of the Arizal, which he presents the whole idea of tzimtzum, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu condensed and contracted and concealed his Eirei HaBilti Bal Gvul, his infinite light, and introduced an Eir Gvuli, a limited light which would trickle into reality or establish reality, and then with this he created all the Eilamas, until Eilam Gashmi, all the world, till this very physical world, and again the whole subject of tzimtzum. So one would suggest that maybe tzimtzum is kipshutai, which means Hashem. Okay, so he's mitzamtzum himself, in other words, he contracted his eir habilti bal gvul, so it's not present as such, because the reality of Eilamus came through the light, which is eir gvuli, a limited light, which created this whole dynamic of Eilamus till this very physical world. So this very physical world does not have, or Hashem's infinite light is not present here. One would maybe suggest so. And the tzimtzum, there was that whole establishment of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the tzimtzum, in other words, Hashem removing his Eir HaBilti Bal Gvul and allowing Eir Gvuli, establishing a limited light, which ultimately would be the chayas and the kiyum, the life and existing energy and force of all the Eilamas till this very physical world. True, granted. But where is the Hashem's Eir HaBilti Bal Gvul? Is it something which is completely removed and it's not in existence over here? That would say that there's Hashem and that there's a dynamic of Eilam. This world and all the other worlds ultimately culminate in Eilam Hazeh Agashmi. And we say Atu Achaleni V'Eilam, we say, well, yes, there was a tzimtzum, but that tzimtzum, the way it's when we, from this side of the coin, appreciate the tzimtzum. From, in other words, where we can understand or exist in the face of the infinite of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because the Eirshter was mitzamtzim, so it contracted and concealed and condensed this great light in order that Eilamis should come into existence again, ultimately this very physical world, and the table, the cup, and everything else, including the human being. But from Hashem's perspective, from Hashem's side of the coin, Hashem Hu Elikim. We spoke about this in the end of Perek Chaf, as well. Again, the Alter Rebbe concludes Perek Chaf Hashem Elikim, which he brings home this message so clearly. That no, don't think that there is another entity which is Eilam. Yeah, from our perspective it seems so, but it's not the emes. The emes is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way Hashem looks at it, and from Milmaila Lamata, in the terms of Chassidus and Kabbalah, it's Hashem Hu Elikim. There is no Eilam, in other words, there's no tzimtzum, is not kipshutei. From Hashem's perspective, the entire infinite expression of Hashem is right here. And that's the point of Hashem Hu Elikim. That Elikim, which is about tzimtzum, is part of the Hashem experience. Hashem decided that He's going to express Himself through Shem Elikim, but He Himself, the entire Hashem, the energy of the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is right here. And from that perspective, there is no Eilam at all. There's only the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We give the example in other words, and that's why Atu Mishnivra Eilam. Even Hashem created this world, but in other words, tzimtzum is not kipshuta. It's not that Chas v'Shalom it was totally removed. The whole infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is right here, and right here is right here in this very place, in this very domain. We gave the example then. Master teaching again, you should maybe waste so much time on this or any time, because you can really go back to the easy access. You can see towards the end or in the message of Perek Chaf, such easy access to the 20th chapter. There's a few classes in the 20th chapter, but again, it's easy to find. But in brief, that for the example which is given, a teacher which is a great scholar, which is decided to teach a child, young in age or in stage, and their little or lack of knowledge, in, let's say, in Torah, for example. And this is this great goy, this great scholar, which is enormous, with enormous scholarship and knowledge and an investment in his Torah all his life, and then you tell him, and he decides, or he's given a mandate to teach a child Torah. So imagine he sits down the way he is, and he opens a Gemara, and he starts divulging all his the way he, with his knowledge, with his many times learning the Gemara, Shas, and Yeshayim and Acherim. He starts learning, and again, even loudly that anybody could hear, and the student is sitting over here across him, and he's listening to everybody saying. The child walks the same way he walks in, that's he's going to walk out. Despite hearing all that important information, important Torah, which he's there to learn some Torah from this master. But the master is going to start learning the way on his own level. The disciple is not going to gain anything. There's nothing. Nothing is nothing at all. He's listening to all the words, but it just goes straight over him or her. So what is this individual? If he wants to take this mandate serious, he wants to himself teach a child, maybe even his own child, to learn Torah. So what he does is he contracts his great scholarship, and he starts. He allows just a bit like a trickle of information, which should again, or a piece of information just trickle from his seichel, and others from his knowledge, in order to share with his talmid, with his pupil, with his student, or as we said, his own child. And he starts teaching him, and many times he has to say a story, like, we find the Medrash. The Medrash says, when Mashal speaks about this, even Hashem, the Moshe Rabbeinu, the Medrash would say, Mashal HaMelech, an example, the king, and he had a good friend, and this is it's a parable too. The king is Hashem, and the good friend is Moshe Rabbeinu, and the people were Am Yisrael, and so on. So the master, as he's teaspooning this information to the child, many times he has to say a story, a parable, and so on. So in the mind of the child, he thinks, oh, what a great storyteller, at least in the initial receiving the information of his master. He says, oh, what a great storyteller. He gives beautiful stories and beautiful mishalim, or someone, even another party goes through this room and doesn't know who this master is, and he starts, and he listens, and he says, wow, what a beautiful storyteller. But ultimately, naturally, the objective of the master is that in the story, the mishalim, he should start, start the flow of the information of this which he wants to teach, the Torah and so on. And then the child, the student, starts climbing from level to level, and as Gemara says, even at Arbaim Shnin, like sometimes it takes 40 years for a student to start thinking in the ways that the master thinks and appreciates Torah and so on. And obviously there's different levels in these 40 years. After a year, you cannot compare the child after a year to the very beginning, or after 2 years to the comparison to after 1 year, and so on and so forth. And every decade, naturally, is a different type of perception of Torah. But in the very beginning, the master needed to conceal his great scholarship in order to be able to relate and teach the child. So in the service, the child, or especially towards the beginning, the child believes, oh, what a great storyteller this is. Or anybody who doesn't know this individual about this great, vast scholarship, but also think, what a great storyteller. But now look at it from the perspective of this master. When the master gives a mashal as an example, and he says, let's say use the same mashal of the Medrash, that he speaks to the child, he says, you're a king, there was once a king. Oh, king. And then he had a good friend. When the master is saying the word king, is on the onset, he's thinking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To him it means, not only thinking about, to him on the onset it means HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When he's saying the word, this master, this king had a good friend, when he's saying the word good friend, in the mind of the master, it means Moshe Rabbeinu. And so on and so forth, in every story, in every anecdote, in every example, parable he's sharing with the disciple, he sees the nimshal more so, he sees the depth, it's Hashem, it's Moshe Rabbeinu. In his mind, the entire, whatever he knows about Moshe Rabbeinu comes to light at the moment he says, this king had a friend. Or when he speaks about the Melech, about the king, all his knowledge of the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is right there in its full experience. And the only one who sees the concealment is the recipient, is the Talmid. Till after 40 years he's going to realize, until he realizes exactly The entire style, again, it takes 40 years, even though there are so many different levels. Each level is another aha, as the child picks up of the profundity and the scholarship of this master. But from the perspective of the master, it was never any tzimtzum. He never really condensed himself. He never became a storyteller. In every word that he said, the entire depth of all his knowledge, in the Gemara, Medrashim, in the Maimari Chazal, saying of our sages of blessed memory, and everything which was written in Shainim and Achreinim about that little word which he just related and shared with the student, is all packed in. There's nothing, he really did not become a storyteller. Every word that he presents to the Talmud, which unto the Talmud it's felt that he is giving him something which is totally external, and he is, but to the Talmud it's only that external dimension. From there he'll have to enter into the true information from the perspective of the Rab. He never became a storyteller. From day one, even after his decision that he's going to condense, he's going to become this teacher, it means that he needs to condense his great knowledge and scholarship and contract it in order to become the teacher, but he never lost for a moment all that information. In every step of the game, the information stands in full tact in his mind. Similarly, when we speak about Hashem, the tzimtzum of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from our perspective and point of view, sure there's a tzimtzum, because if not, anything finite cannot stand in the face of the infinite. And Hashem was mitzamtzum eirei habilti balgvul, his infinite light al atzad. But again, that's from our perspective. From Hashem's perspective, Hashem hu elikim. So right here, you have the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, when we learn about it, it seems beautiful, and it's such a rich concept. Again, Alter Rebbe points this out and explains this in a number of places, namely in Perek Yutes, namely Chof, even more Chof, and towards the end of Chof, it brings home again this Hashem hu elikim. Shar Yechid Amunah, Alter Rebbe explains it as well in expansion and elaboration, which is the second part of Tanya. Then the Yid, after learning of that, closes the Sefer and thinks for a moment and says, really? The infinity of Hashem is right here, in this room, by this table, and exactly the way it was before creation. And I know before creation, nothing could have existed, everything would be consumed with the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And right here you have the entire same exact, without any difference. Atu Acheleni V'Elam, Atu Mishni V'Elam, the entire infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Really? Then he takes a siddur and he says, Baruch Atah Hashem. It's a different Atah. It's a different Hashem. Elokeinu. This becomes Kechenu V'Chayiseinu, as the Baal Shem Tov once said, that it's a miracle that after davening, a person is able to function normally. And Baal Shem Tov says, in essence, a person had to say Hagoimel, Chayovim Tevis. I should bench the bracha of Hagoimel after every davening, because if you truly experienced a true davening, there's no way that you could remain intact and function normally after davening, because it's the time you entered into that experience, not only talking face to face with Hashem, appreciating the infinite reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So why didn't you consume into that reality? Why didn't you have that kleis hanefesh? It says about Nadav Avihu, you see that L'Sheinas V'Eirachaim HaKodesh, about Nadav Avihu, they became part. They became one with the Achdus Hashem. That's the reason why they expired, because they had that tvekus, or that tzimoin, that thirst and that yearning, and they appreciated the infinity, the Ein Sof, the way Hashem is the true Ein Sof Baruch Hu. In other words, from Hashem's perspective, they appreciated it and they were drawn to it, and that's why they expired. And from the lashon of the Baal Shem Tov, that if you really appreciated that sensation of Achdus Hashem, how come you didn't expire? And if you didn't, it's the chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu which allows you to continue to function normal after davening, to accomplish all this what Hashem wants you to accomplish in the other kavan, in the other ways that Hashem wants you to connect with Him through learning Torah and doing mitzvahs and so on. So, what did you gain over here when you close? Again, we mentioned last week the idea of thinking. You'll see this. Thinking, Pnimis HaTorah. If someone asked you prior to this experience, what did you understand? You can say, you can give over the class, you heard the class, you appreciate it, you can explain it even with a smashal, a rab, and a talmud, a master, and a pupil. Excellent. You can give it over because you appreciate it on the Chachma Bina level, and you can give it over on the Chachma Bina level. When you closed the Sefer and you thought about it, what you did was, ooh, it's real. It's here. It's now. Right here. That's revolutionary. That step, as you enter into the utilization of the Das faculty, it's not only just another way of appreciating the matter, but now it's real. And if it's real, you're mekusher to it, you're connected to it, you're connected to it, you're there. As Alter Rebbe says over here, it's the idea of like looking at something physical. You look at something physical, you connect to the physical. And again, not to misunderstand Alter Rebbe saying, well, you can get excited about the physical, so not everything in physical you get excited about. If it's a piece of plastic, there's one type of excitement, or no excitement at all. And if it's a nice computer with so many beautiful programs that contribute to all good things, my livelihood and so on, obviously I have a different appreciation. No, the Alter Rebbe speaks about the excitement, the connection to something physical is because you see it. Anything you don't see, as real as it is to you, you don't adequately connect to it because one way or another it's hovering over you. You understand it perfectly with all details and articulation, and you don't miss any nuance and any detail, and you can give it over so perfectly. But you cannot say you can connect. You're connected to it because it remains one way or another conceptual. As opposed to something physical, you connect to something physical because it's tangible to you. You see it, you can touch it, and so on. Therefore, you're mekusher to a davar gashmi. And this is what Das does. It takes that concept and allows the person to look at it as something real, something almost you can say like it's something physical. It obviously doesn't have any of the physical tangibility, but nonetheless, you look at it as something real as something which is physical, which something physical, and because it's physical, you see it and you could feel it, you connect to it. You're there because again, because you're able to see it and again feel it. So too there's the hiskashrus. He connected to Chava because again it was that intimate experience which can establish that connection, that becoming intimate with these concepts of Elokus. Again, not so much the gathering of information, but the pause and allowing the Das to come in to look at it as something real. Then you connect to it for real, and that begins this transformative experience of Deyu B'Lev of Shalom, serving a Kodesh Baruch Hu with a complete heart. Nish gemacht, not stam, gemacht, geschrien, gehackt, if you will, but a real Lev of Shalom, a real complete heart. So let's see it inside. The la'ikir, it's not only gathering information, but la'ikir lahamig daite bigdus Hashem, to profoundly invest your knowledge in the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, daite that is, and to anchor your thoughts in HaKadosh Baruch Hu with strength, v'emetz halev, and might of the heart, and the mind, that your mind should be connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with a mighty and strong connection, like you're connected with something physical, what you see with your own eyes evidently. And you profoundly invest your mind in it because it's tangible to you. And as we said, not because of what it is, it's because it's gashmi, so you'll be able to connect to it. Because it's real. And this is the faculty, again, the mode of Das, or getting into the mode in utilizing that Das faculty is looking at that same concept as something real. And that doesn't matter if sometimes you can invest more time. Obviously, the more time and the more you invest your mind, again, that Das, the more excited one would get. But it's something which is beyond time, if you will. We mentioned again in this very thing we mentioned which we noted last week, and we re-mentioned this again about the idea of thinking of our Chassidus doesn't have like a beginning and the end, because this is again, it's about an intimate connection. It's not measured on the clock. Sometimes with the Chochmah Bina we have a Seder, we learn from this time to this time, and this is 6 to 7. And the meeting starts at 7:15. I could think about it for 3 minutes, for 2 minutes, but it's the connection with it on the Das level it's beyond time, because it's a matter of, this is the kesher, because I look at it as something real. I got it. And this is why the Alter Rebbe uses the Lashon Iskashus, because that's what Das is. Das is the Lashon Iskashus, and he brings the pasuk of Adam Yoda, the Geimer. The Alter Rebbe continues and says, "V'keich zel midah zu l'kasha daiti b'Hashem," and this keich and this midah, this ability to connect one's Das and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, yesh b'chol nefesh mebeis Yisrael. Every single soul of Yidden, men, women, and children. We mentioned also, Alter Rebbe uses that term, Beis Yisrael, like the Rambam, famous Kol, when he speaks about Kiddush Hashem, Kol Beis Yisrael, the commentaries say, what's that term called? Beis Yisrael, it's men, women, children, without any differentiation of one's level in his scholarship, or in his piety. Every Yid has it as an innate nature, again, being Nikosam Nishmas Moshe Rabbeinu Alav Shalom, as he nourishes from the neshama Moshe Rabbeinu Alav Shalom, so he has this innately, every single Yid, whoever it may be, Mi Beis Yisrael, men, women, and children, have that ability to connect their Das and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Elokus should become true, real, and tangible and palpable. Hence, connect to it on that level. The only thing is, so if that's the case, why aren't we all walking Moses? We should all be Moshe Rabbeinu, walking the face of the earth, with a connection to Moshe Rabbeinu. For whatever reason, it doesn't seem to be so. Moshe Rabbeinu was neshama b'guf. He was always intuitive to the godly reality, to the divine, on a constant basis. Moshe Kibbutz Torah Misinas from the very beginning. One of the 10 ways that the Gemara brings out, classically, this idea when the Yidden complained about they didn't have the ability to do the Korban Pesach, Moshe Rabbeinu says, hold on, let me see what Hashem is going to tell me, and I'll get right back to you. And he turns to Hashem. Hashem gives him not only information, an entire mitzvah, which completes the entire Torah. As the commentaries point out, it wasn't just a piece of information. This became a new mitzvah, or a mitzvah Hashem had in mind. He wanted Yidden to demand it again. It's explained the commentaries. But he turns to Hashem within moments later. He's telling him about Yidden, we have a new mitzvah for you, which is Pesach Sheni, and so on. Imdu ve'eshma, just a moment. Ma'itzav Hashem lachem. Moshe's intuition about Elokus, which is unprecedented. It was something that he was a neshama b'guf, but nonetheless he was ish elikim. Tefillah l'moshe shelikim, as it says, mil chetzel l'mayli, he was elikim. Chetzel l'mata ish. He lechem le'yochel. He was up in Har Sinai as a human being. He didn't eat and drink for 40 days, 3 times, 40 days and 40 nights. This is clear Torah Shebiksav. So, okay, we can't say we should be a Moshe Rabbeinu mamish with all details. Moshe Rabbeinu's intuitiveness to Elokus, and constantly in tune to the divine, but somewhat, if we're constantly, this is embedded in every single Yid, and the mere nature of every single Yid as it nourishes from the Moshe Neshama, Moshe Rabbeinu Shalom, why don't we have that? That should be the norm. It should be the norm of the Yid. So here the Alter Rebbe says that would be good if the Neshama would maintain or continue to be divested of body and animal soul. But we know this neshama, which is a chelik of the kamimal, which is a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, didn't remain divested of body and nefesh bahamis. It invests in the nefesh bahamis, it invests in the body, in the animal soul, and in the body, and we don't need to explain at all. The body has a different set of priorities. The bodily inclinations, the animalistic inclinations are very different and diametrically opposite than the inclination of a godly soul, which is part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And again, this das, which we receive and we nourish from the neshama Moshe Rabbeinu Alav Shalom. So you have this dichotomy. On the other hand, one hand from the perspective of the neshama, yes, the Yid's the attainability of the Yid to Elokus is grand. This is normal. But the other hand, we have this neshama investing in a guf, in a body. And the body obscures of the reality of the neshama. And for this, like anything else, but particularly for this, because you're dealing with something very sensitive, the Avdei B'Lev Shalom, it's not only telling the Yid, despite you have different cravings, put on the tefillin, despite you have other interests, put up the mezuzah, and put on the tefillin every day, and keep every Shabbos. This is much deeper, much more nuanced, or much more sensitive, because you're dealing with extracting a passion to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, emoting with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So for this, you need additional yegiyah, additional toil. Alter Rebbe says, let's face it, because it invests in a body, it needs great toil, great exertion, an intense exertion. Double and quadruple yigiyah. Alter Rebbe is being very realistic, even though he was a tzaddik himself, but he's talking to every average yid. Well, the guf obscures the reality and the ambitions and the desires of the neshama, in this case the das of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore we have to extract it. In order to extract it, because of, again, the thickness, if you will, of the body, the way it obscures and covers up and layers itself over the purity of the neshama, or the natural expression of the neshama, to not only be driven to Lakus, but the knowledge in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it needs that great exertion. Now, today we use the lashon kfulim chupelas, double and quadruple, which bichlal, whenever it says something double, we know commentaries say, for example, when Torah says ma'id, it's not only 2/1, but it's the many folds over. And especially, and so too the Alter Rebbe writes, and again, because the Torah is not going to say it so many times, the Torah, it's enough, suffice to say in ma'id, to understand that it's many times more than that one ma'id, which ma'id itself means also much and many, and so on, also carries that, that profound depth in this which Torah is trying to convey. If it's Teva ha'aretz ma'id, or anything that Torah uses, particularly the expression of ma'id, but even if it's not ma'id, everything double, again, it's not only the 2/1, it has much, it's many times fold, many levels over that one, again, expressed in a double expression. Here the Alter Rebbe doesn't only write kfula, but he writes mechupeles, which is quadruple, which carries a message much. The Rebbe is kind of saying, let's be honest, and I'm going to identify with this reality that you need not just a regular exertion, you need a double exertion, and not only a double, but perhaps a quadruple exertion, in order to establish the norm of Yedias Hashem, to be able to utilize that gift, what Moshe Rabbeinu imparts with every single Yid, the knowledge in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which causes the Leib of Shalom. It's attainable, it's there, it's inherent, but you need the Yigiyah Rabbah, you need the great exertion, you need the intense exertion to bring that to the surface and make that the norm and the experience of your service, of you as a Yid in your service to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Alter Rebbe is going to go on, again, B'ez Hashem, we'll learn this next week, and he guides us, like everything else. The Alter Rebbe leaves no detail, just doesn't say this in a general manner. Yes, you got to work hard to extract it. He shows us exactly the ways, what type of Yigiyas HaNefesh, what type of Yigiyah, what type of exertion, what type of effort. And he takes us step by step in order that we should be able to extract this das of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this knowledge of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and ultimately lead to the Avdeyu B'Lev of Shalom, serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu with a complete heart. Have a good